thank you to our next choreographer. Everybody in the dance world, this man needs no introduction, but for everybody else, this is the one and only Peter Sparling, one of my most beloved mentors. So happy to have you here as part of Dance Lansing 2020. And for those of us who don't know you, I just wonder, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, it's great, Missy, to be with you on Zoom. This is the new culture, I guess, this Zooming. All right, a little bit about myself. I am a Michigan kid, born and raised in Detroit. One of 6 kids. My parents were both musicians. And so I was allowed a lot of freedom as I was growing up to do whatever I wanted to do. I was a bit of a sissy, but while my brothers were all in sports and tearing the house down, I was very placid and reading my books and this and that. I got involved in music. I was a voice soprano and then a violinist. I was really serious into music. And that took me up to Interlochen for summer camp. And that led to going to Interlochen Arts Academy. My 10th grade year, my first week I was at Interlochen, I was told that I could get out of phys ed if I took an introduction to dance class. I went, oh, I'll do anything to get out of gym. And so there I was in a ballet studio, a dance studio at Interlochen, and they asked me to stand at the bar with my left hand on the bar and to, stand up and to plie. And everyone gasped and said, oh my God, you have turnout. You have such amazing turnout. And I said, what's turnout? So anyways, by my end of my junior year, I had choreographed my first work. I'd made a little trio and had created the score myself by collaging natural sounds with music that I had composed and improvised. And at the end of that little performance as a dance minor, I stood with the applause washing over us, and this bolt of light went down through my body and rooted me to the floor. And it was like, aha, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a dancer. And then in a matter of moments, I thought, well, if I'm going to be a choreographer, a choreographer is what I wanted to be. But then I figured, well, I better learn how to dance if I was going to choreograph. So I changed my major to dance. My senior year at Interlochen, I was dancing 4 or 5 hours a day, and I auditioned at various schools, was accepted into Juilliard, and that led me to New York. So long story short, 4 years at Juilliard, 2 years with the Jose Limon Dance Company while I was a student. Graduated from Juilliard, invited by Martha Graham to join her company. I danced with Martha from 73 to 79, left to start my own company in New York, but continued to guest perform with Martha and to tour with her. I took a job in London for a year, thinking I might want to live in Europe. But then I heard about a job at University of Michigan. And I thought, well, why don't I try that? So I did 2 years half-time, splitting a full position with Jessica Fogel, who was one of your instructors as well. And we both were then offered full positions. So from roughly 86 to 2016, I was full-time at University of Michigan, tenured. I chaired the program. And in 93, I was offered to direct a local dance company, which became Peter Sparling Dance Company. It also came with a studio, dance gallery. So I was directing both company and studio and chairing the dance department program. It was insane. My husband, John Gatoski, often reminds me of what a temperamental, ornery guy I was, because I was, I was dancing on so many fronts and barely had time to think. But, we dancers do that. we take on so much because we figure we've got to do it all. We have to teach, perform, choreograph, direct, raise money, write grants. I mean, I just grew up assuming that I had to do everything. You know that very well. Anyways, I had a wonderful run at the University of Michigan in the dance department. Um, and just 2 years ago, I retired after 34 years. So that's roughly it.
That's your life story in a nutshell, and you've just touched so many lives. And you know, I'm biased, but I'm not alone in thinking that you are just a national treasure. So thank you for all that you've done for all of us.
It's very kind of you to say thank you.
So thank you again for being willing to be part of Dance Lansing 2020, our virtual experience. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you agreed to participate this year?
Well, we were chatting a bit before we started recording. This interesting challenge that dancers such as yourself have in bringing together your experience as a young artist, having had 2 degrees at various universities and dance departments, knowing what the professional contemporary dance world consists of, and this whole idea of making art from dance, bridging that with the needs of and the interests of your broader community. And that community involves different levels of interest, different aesthetics, in terms of whether people are coming to dance from the commercial perspective, from MTV, from musical theater, jazz, hip hop, or whether they want classical ballet, whether they want competition dance, or whether they want a serious experience with modern dance or contemporary dance, depending on what you might want to call it. People look at dance as something that gives them joy and pleasure in their everyday life. And some people become so interested that they want to forge careers out of it. So I really admire you for trying to bridge all of those different interest groups at all the different levels and to make something meaningful for your community. I think that's really valuable. I have been dancing for 50 years and traveled all over the world, and I've seen what dance can mean to people at different levels. I often see too how dance can become a little too elitist and too precious. And it can leave out diversity, not only in terms of race and social economic status, but in terms of the aesthetic and of how dance can mean so many different things to so many different people. So I admire what you're doing, and I want to do whatever I can to help.
Well, thank you. I'm I've always been blown away by the work that you're doing in the digital media. And you've been doing that for decades, like way before it was digital. You were doing it in the 80s in the analog times. So, and then when you started sharing things on social media and making it so accessible to everybody, that's been a real gift. So the piece that we're going to be showing after we show this interview is A New Beginning. Can you tell us about that particular piece?
Yeah, I'd say it's rather small scale relative to a lot of my work. And that has to do with the situation we all find ourselves in during this quarantine time. For the past 3 months, I've been working out of my home studio, which is a combination painting studio. I'm an avid painter. And a dance studio. I have my green screen set up there, and that's where I filmed the movement that you'll see in A New Beginning. I have
Peter,
my
I have to
editing
interrupt you for
console
just a
here.
second because we lost your audio. Could you back up about
Okay.
5 seconds and repeat what you just said?
All right. I was just saying that in my home studio here, I have pretty much everything I need to paint and to also shoot video. You'll see the green screen behind me, which allows me to use chroma key in Final Cut Pro. In other words, I can film my figure against the green import it into Final Cut Pro, and then apply chroma key, which will allow me to float my body in a black void and then insert any background that I want. Of course, Hollywood does this all the time, and I'm sure your audiences know much more about the possibilities of video than I did at your age or at their age. But I've been challenged to think how I can make my art, continue to make art in my studio, but also confront and address the issues that are weighing on all of us now. How do we relate as individuals to this enormous scale of crisis that we're in? What can we as solitary artists say? How can we make in our art some representation of how we are feeling about our relationship to the world in isolation? Everyone is experiencing, I think, this kind of self-imposed exile, isolation, a lot of solitude. I've got to say, Missy, that it's nothing new for me as an artist. I'm used to working in solitude. I'm used to spending hours alone. I will perform, I will conceive of a dance, I'll perform it, I'll videotape it, I will edit it, and then I will produce screen dances that I send out to festivals and that are screened on screens everywhere in the world. So I'm kind of a one-man show. I'm used to that. But there's something really haunting and disturbing about being confined, like enforced confinement, and the thought that we are all in danger. Our lives are in danger if we're not really safe and careful and considerate about this. Anyways, I woke up one morning a month or so ago, and I wanted to write down a poem. I had this thought. I had walked out onto our back patio in the morning, and I noticed that things seemed quieter, that there was less traffic, there were less sounds. It was quieter. And I had been noticing that for a while during the shutdown, the statewide stay-at-home order, that life had slowed down. I live in the northwest corner of Ann Arbor. We're not even a mile away from 94 as it passes Jackson Road. We back up against an elementary school, so I often hear school kids playing on the playground. There was no sound. I began to hear birds. I began to hear a different quality of ambient noise. And my ears suddenly kind of perked up, and I thought, wow, things are more three-dimensional. There's something about being in the space and the effect that it's having on my ears, and the fact of listening, the sense of hearing that is making an impression on me. And I got to write that down. So I went inside and I wrote down this short poem, and then I immediately thought, I have to make a dance. So I came out to my studio, and I had recorded my voice reading the poem. So I played that as I improvised against green screen. And I then looked at it on the screen and I said, all right, there's text, there's my movement, it needs something more. So I went to the Prelinger Archives online, Prelinger Archives. It is a gold mine of imagery. This fellow Prelinger had started many years ago this free archives of all of this copyright-free film footage that goes back to the origins of film. It's an extraordinary trove of films that are industrial films from the auto industry, films that you and I saw in elementary school about health, about social issues. I mean, and I go back to the 50s and early 60s where those films, suddenly I was looking at those films from the 20s, 30s, 40s. Anyways, I found a film about, I thought, I need some images of the ear. And so I found films about colds and infections and these wonderful old diagrams of the inner ear. And I downloaded those from the Prelinger archive and started overlaying my dancing figure with these images and, in a sense, montaging or collaging. Uh, and it began to kind of create its own little universe where my figure was against these images from these old films, and it gave my body a different scale. I would make myself very small in the midst of these larger images, or I would try to simulate a way where it looked as though I was within within one of these filmed landscapes, or that the image of an inner ear actually became my ear, or vice versa. And these are the fun tricks of vision that one can play with in editing. For me, editing is like choreography. It's the same thing. You choreograph your entrances and your exits, your cross dissolves, the lights fade in, they fade out. You populate it. I like to clone myself too, where I can replicate my image and I can actually populate the screen with kind of Busby Berkeley like group unison sections and then even go into counterpoint. It becomes very much a compositional device for me, where I'm composing with my own figure.
Okay, so if people are watching this during our watch party on July 31st, now we will show this piece of work, and with the rich backdrop you just gave us, really looking forward to seeing it. A New Beginning by Peter Sparling.